Greetings from the Book Whisper. Every story is a journey into a world of love, passion, deception, and self-discovery. Close your eyes, let the sounds carry you away, and may this story touch your heart. The last summer at Grey Gardens. The heat that summer in Savannah was a physical presence. It lay over the historic district like a sodden wool blanket, making the Spanish moss drip, the azalea blossoms wilt, and the very bricks of the old townhouses sweat. Inside the grand, slightly shabby drawing room of Grey Gardens, Charlotte Kingsley felt the heat, but it was a distant nuisance compared to the cold knot in her stomach. The knot had a name, though she did not speak it aloud: Betrayal. For 23 years, Grey Gardens had been her kingdom, a legacy of her old Savannah family, now kept afloat by her husband Arthur's shrewd investments and her own relentless, flawless hosting of garden parties and charity boards. Their marriage was a well-appointed exhibit in the Museum of Southern Propriety: polished silver, inherited portraits of stern ancestors, and a silence between them so profound you could hear the dust settle on the Chippendale furniture. It was a silence Charlotte had long mistaken for comfort, the quiet understanding of two people who had built a life. Now, she knew it for what it was: the void where affection had once been, now drained dry. The change in Arthur had been subtle, a series of small withdrawals over the past 18 months, later work nights with flimsy, over-explained excuses, a new, expensive cologne Santos de Cartier that smelled of spice and money and didn't suit his essence of starch and old books, a distracted air when she spoke of restoring the greenhouse, a project she'd dreamed of for a decade. He'd wave a hand: the budget, Charlotte, next year, perhaps. She'd chalked it up to stress, to the mysterious, ulcer-forming pressures of high finance. She was, after all, the understanding wife. It was her primary role. Until she found the receipt. It was for a necklace, a delicate Art Deco platinum piece with a square-cut Colombian emerald, from a boutique in Charleston she'd admired in a magazine but never dared enter. The date was 2 weeks prior, the day after her own birthday. Arthur had given her pearl earrings that morning, beautiful, familiar, safe. The receipt, crisp and damning, was tucked in the breast pocket of a linen blazer he'd sent to the cleaners. A servant had found it and placed it on her escritoire, assuming it was hers. Charlotte's hand didn't even tremble as she picked it up. She checked the heavy mahogany jewelry box that had belonged to her grandmother. No emerald necklace. The space where it should have lain was a velvet-lined void. That was the moment the familiar, tolerable chill of her marriage froze into a sharp, clear pane of ice. This was not a midlife crisis. This was a transaction, a considered, discreet, and meticulously executed betrayal, the kind a man like Arthur Kingsley would commit, an emotional crime with the precision of a ledger entry. The passion, she thought with a dull throb of irony, was in the purchase, not the heart. Charlotte did not confront. Confrontation was for people with nothing to lose, who traded in shouts and slammed doors. She had a name, a legacy, a life built like a house of carefully balanced, antique cards. A single wrong breath could collapse it. Instead, she became an archivist of her own undoing. She began to observe with the focused, dispassionate intensity of a naturalist studying a new, dangerous species that had invaded her ecosystem. Arthur's business trips to Charleston, a 2-hour drive he'd always complained about, now had a new pattern. They coincided, she discovered, with the luminous social media posts of a woman named Isabel Renard, a 42-year-old widow. Charlotte found the tasteful, heartbreaking obituary online with ease, who ran a celebrated interior design firm, Renard Company, out of an impeccably restored carriage house on Trod Street. Her Instagram was a curated dream of tasteful chintz and crisp linen, of antique maps and gilded frames, of sun-dappled courtyards with trickling fountains. It spoke of a life that was effortlessly artistic, unburdened by the heavy, inherited weight of Grey Gardens. And in 3 separate posts, over the past 8 months, a familiar, masculine hand, Arthur's, with his father's heavy signet ring rested on a wrought iron table, held a stem of crystal with Sancerre, lay casually on a sun-bleached quilt in a field of lupins. The passion Charlotte saw was not in lurid, stolen moments, but in this aesthetic harmony. Isabel's world was everything Arthur had tried, and failed, to cultivate with her. Charlotte was Savannah bedrock, practical, stoic, rooted in duty. Isabel was Charleston light, airy, creative, appealing to aspiration. She was the embodiment of the cultured, effortless life he'd probably imagined when he'd married into the Kingsley name, only to find it came with leaky roofs, demanding social calendars, and a wife who valued history over fantasy. The intrigue began not with a desire to win him back, the very thought made her throat constrict, but to understand the full, humiliating architecture of her own defeat, and then, with the patience of a master restorer facing a botched renovation, to quietly, irreversibly dismantle it. She hired a discreet investigator, a retired Savannah City policeman named Lucas, who came recommended by her lawyer, a man who understood the value of discretion over flash. Lucas was in his 60s, with the weary eyes of someone who'd seen every permutation of human folly. His report, delivered in a plain envelope, was clinical. Arthur visited the Trott Street carriage house every other Friday, arriving at 7 p.m., leaving Sunday before noon. They were seen at intimate gallery openings in the French Quarter, dined at impossible to get into restaurants like Fig and Husk, walked hand in hand along the Battery at dusk. It was a full, parallel life, a courtship conducted with the solemnity of a second marriage. "Do you want photographs for evidence, Mrs. Kingsley?" Lucas asked over sweet tea on her shaded porch, his voice low, gravelly monotone. "It's standard." Charlotte watched a hummingbird duel at the feeder. "No, Mr. Lucas, photographs are for divorces. I am not ready for a divorce. I want a financial profile of Ms. Renard, her business liquidity, her debts, her client list, and," she turned her cool, gray eyes to him, "I want to know if my husband has opened any new lines of credit, or made any significant transfers from our joint holdings or the family trust in the last 2 years." The financial trail, unearthed by Lucas's contact at a discreet forensic accounting firm, was the deeper, more profound betrayal. Arthur had not used obvious household funds. He had dipped into Kingsley Capital Partners, LLC, a separate, discreet portfolio he managed, one seated with a significant portion of her own inheritance from her mother. He had purchased the emerald necklace. He had paid $45,000 for a historical restoration consultation that covered a new slate roof for Isabel's carriage house. There was a $25,000 loan, listed as a business development advance, to Renard Company. 6 months prior, he was, Charlotte realized with a sickening lurch that finally broke through her icy calm, building a nest. He was funding his new life, his new identity as a patron of the arts and a romantic hero, with the very bones of her old one. Her initial disappointment in him, in the wasted years, in her own blindness crystallized that night into a cold, gym-hard fury. She would not be the discarded wife, the aging monument left to crumble while he used her fortune to refurbish his fantasy. She would be the silent, unforgiving executor of that fantasy's failure. Her plan required a deep, patient understanding of both her enemy and his weakness. Arthur's weakness was his newfound identity. He saw himself not as an adulterer, but as a connoisseur who had finally found a worthy object for his patronage and passion. Isabel's weakness was her business, an empire built entirely on the fragile currency of reputation and taste. Charlotte's first move was social, her native battlefield. At her next garden party, surrounded by the soft clink of ice and sweet tea glasses and the murmur of old money, she leaned towards Eleanor Vanderbilt, the formidable wife of the museum director. "Eleanor, darling, you're so well connected in the design world. I hear the most fascinating things about a firm in Charleston, Renard Company. The principal is Isabel Renard. I hear she's the name for sensitive historic restorations now." Eleanor, whose antennae were always tuned to the frequency of new talent and potential scandal, perked up. "Oh, I've seen the name. Lovely work, from what I've glimpsed." "Lovely indeed," Charlotte agreed, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. Though Margaret Allister, she summers near Charleston, mentioned she'd heard the tiny whisper something about the sourcing for those magnificent French tapestries in the Calhoun House project. Questions about authenticity, apparently, but it's probably just envy, of course. Charleston can be such a snake pit. She delivered the line with a dismissive, graceful wave of her hand, the perfect gesture of someone sharing a baseless rumor they were too noble to believe. The seed, tiny and poisonous, was planted in the most fertile of soils, Savannah society gossip. It would grow. Her second move was digital, a frontier she navigated with the careful distaste of a general using a new, unsavory weapon. From an anonymous, encrypted email account, she contacted 3 of Isabel's past clients she'd identified from society pages and design magazines, posing as a potential client from New York. Mrs. Abigail Sinclair, looking to restore a Hamptons estate. She wrote eloquent, flattering emails praising Isabel's work before sliding in the knife. My only hesitation, and I share this in confidence, is a comment from a colleague in the auction world who questioned the definitive provenance of the 18th century boiserie in the Darlington project. Of course, I'm sure it's all above board, but as you know, with these investments, could you perhaps put my mind at ease? She wasn't accusing, she was inquiring with the worried tone of a savvy woman who'd heard a troubling rumor. The goal was not to get answers, but to create unease, to make Isabel's clients look sideways at their own treasures. The tension in her own home at Grey Gardens became a silent, humming thing, like the vibration before a string snaps. Arthur was more distracted, irritable. He took phone calls in the walled garden, his voice a low murmur. He snapped at the gardener over a wilting hydrangea. He cancelled a long-standing weekend commitment to the historic Savannah Foundation Board, citing a migraine, an affliction he'd never had. The crescendo, Charlotte decided, would be a public one, not a vulgar scene, but a demolition by nuance. The venue presented itself, the Charleston Antiques Forum, a premier, fiercely respected event where scholars, dealers, and the ultra-wealthy converged. Isabel Renard was to give a keynote lecture on integrity in restoration, truth versus aesthetic in the modern age. The irony was almost too perfect. Arthur, of course, had registered to attend. A week before the forum, Charlotte approached him as he sorted mail in the library. "Arthur," she said, her voice softened with a fragility she expertly conjured, "I've been feeling so dreary lately, shut up in this old house with my thoughts. I saw the brochure for that antiques forum in Charleston. Isabel Renard is speaking. I remember you mentioning her work once. It might do me good to get away, to hear something stimulating. Would you mind terribly if I joined you?" He looked up, caught utterly off guard. A storm of emotions crossed his face: panic, guilt, frustration before being smoothed into the bland politeness of their marriage. "Charlotte, it's a dreadfully dull affair, all dusty old men talking about porcelain. But the lecture topic, it speaks to me, Arthur. After all, preserving what's real is what we do here, isn't it?" She held his gaze, her eyes wide and guileless. "Unless you have other plans, business, perhaps?" The trap was baited with her perceived weakness and his own guilt. He could not refuse without raising the very suspicion he lived to avoid. "No, no other plans," he said, the words tight. "Of course, you should come, if you think it will help." The forum was held in the grand, columned hall of the Charleston Library Society. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, lemon polish, and subtle, expensive perfume. Isabel took the stage, a vision in a cream-colored Stella McCartney pantsuit, her blonde hair a perfect chignon. She was elegant, assured, her voice a cultured mezzo-soprano that commanded the room. Her lecture was intelligent, polished, weaving art history with client anecdotes. She showed breathtaking slides of her work. Then, she presented her pièce de résistance, the restoration of a rare, circa 1747 recarpet for an anonymous, prestigious client. The before photo showed it stained with what looked like wine, torn at one corner. The after was a vision of vibrant color and intricate pattern, a resurrection. Charlotte, sitting beside a rigid, pale Arthur in the third row, felt her pulse calm. She waited. The Q&A began. Polite questions about wool sourcing, dye techniques. Then, a man near the front, Julian Thorne, a respected dealer from London whom Mrs. Abigail Sinclair had anonymously emailed with specific, pointed questions, raised his hand. His voice, dry and carrying the weight of centuries of connoisseurship, cut through the air-conditioned hum. "A remarkable transformation, Miss Renard," he began, not unkindly, "a testament to skill. I couldn't help but notice, however, the distinctive scrolling acanthus border pattern on the restored lower third. It very closely resembles, in fact is nearly identical to, a pattern used by a well-known atelier in Brussels in the late 19th century, a firm famous for its homages to earlier styles. Could you speak to your documentation for the repair materials, and perhaps clarify for the audience whether your client was fully, transparently informed that a significant and valuable portion of this Savonnerie carpet is, in fact, A very skilled late 19th century reproduction? The room did not gasp, it inhaled, a single, shocked breath held in unison. 100 heads swiveled between the speaker and Isabel on stage. Her smile remained, but it became a brittle, porcelain mask. The confidence in her eyes flickered, replaced by a flash of pure, undiluted terror. She stammered about artistic interpretation, about the necessity of sympathetic restoration when original materials were lost, about the client's desire for a cohesive aesthetic. Her words, once so fluid, now sounded defensive, evasive. The specifics of her answer didn't matter. The doubt, the question of integrity, the very title of her lecture was now a visible, widening crack in her impeccably constructed facade. In this world, the accusation of passing off a reproduction as restoration was not a mistake, it was professional suicide. Charlotte did not look at Isabel, she watched Arthur's profile. She saw the blood drain from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. She saw not anger at the accuser, but a dawning, horrified realization that mirrored Isabel's. The perfect, beautiful world he'd invested in financially, emotionally, with her money was flawed. It was, perhaps, as much a careful, beautiful performance as his own life with Charlotte had been. The foundation of his fantasy was sent. After the lecture, a quiet, scandalized chaos simmered. Arthur tried to push through the crowd towards the stage, where Isabel was now surrounded by a knot of concerned colleagues and 2 sharp-eyed journalists from the Wall Street Journal and Architectural Digest. Charlotte gently, firmly, took his elbow. Her touch was ice. "Darling," she murmured, her voice the epitome of wifely concern, "this is awful for her. Simply awful, but look at the vultures circling. Perhaps we should give her some space. You look pale, let's get some air. The heat in here is stifling." He was too stunned to resist. She led him, a sleepwalker, out into the courtyard. The Charleston night was thick, the air sweet with jasmine and disgrace. Under a crescent moon, he finally broke. He pulled away from her, leaning against a mossy brick wall as if his legs would no longer hold him. "Did you know?" he whispered, his voice ragged, stripped of all its banker's authority. "Know what, Arthur?" Her tone was all innocent, bewildered concern. About the questions, about her work, about the carpet. Only the same whispers everyone hears in these circles. "Dear, you know how it is, crab buckets, the lot of them. I'm sure she'll explain it all." It's just she let a sigh escape, heavy with implication. Such unfortunate timing. With everything, she let the words hang in the humid air. With the emerald necklace, with the new roof, with our money, with your second life. The drive back to Savannah was a 2-hour tomb of silence. Arthur stared out the window at the blur of pine barrens, seeing nothing. Charlotte watched the road, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The parallel life he had built with such care had been exposed not as a scandalous love nest, but as a potential professional and financial embarrassment, a poor investment in a counterfeit masterpiece. The passion he felt would now be forever tinged with the acid of doubt, social ridicule, and the terrifying question of what else was not as it seemed. The unraveling was swift, discreet, and merciless. Within 2 weeks, Arthur, without a word to Charlotte, dissolved the Kingsley Capital Partners LLC and repatriated the remaining funds, with a significant loss, back into the Core Family Trust. The emerald necklace, Charlotte later discovered from a discreet follow-up inquiry by Lucas, was returned to the boutique. The Lonternard Company was called in. The affair didn't end with a passionate farewell or a screaming match. It ended with a series of brutal financial corrections and a silence even deeper than the one in their marriage. He became a ghost haunting Grey Gardens, spending long, silent hours in the garden, finally overseeing the greenhouse repairs with a newfound, melancholy diligence, as if trying to restore something he couldn't name. The unexpected twist, the one Charlotte had not orchestrated, came on a cool, crystalline autumn morning. A Federal Express package arrived, addressed to her in a flowing, elegant hand. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, was not a document, but a small, exquisite watercolor. It was a view of Grey Gardens' famous, wildly overgrown side garden, the one she loved and Arthur had always wanted to tame. The artist had captured it perfectly, the defiant blaze of late blooming roses against the crumbling brick wall, the delicate tracery of bare wisteria vines, the way the low autumn light gilded the decay. It was masterful, tender, and heartbreakingly honest. There was no note inside the package, but tucked under the backing board was a heavy cream cardstock. Mrs. Kingsley, I am closing my practice in Charleston. I believed I was in the business of restoring beauty, but I understand now I was sometimes merely creating convincing facades. I see the same formidable artistry in your silence. This is not an apology you would accept, nor do I offer one you would believe. It is, perhaps, a recognition from one craftsperson to another. The garden is beautiful precisely because it is real, and untamed. Charlotte held the card for a long time, standing in the very spot the painting depicted. Isabelle Renard had seen through it all. She had understood that Charlotte's revenge was not the crude weapon of exposure, but the surgical, precise application of truth as a corrosive. They had both been players, and ultimately victims, in a drama Arthur had written for himself. But in the end, the two women held the pen. One had written the ruin, the other had painted the aftermath. She had the watercolor framed in simple, unadorned ash and hung it in her morning room, where the first, clean winter light would touch it. Arthur never commented on it. He seemed to look through it, as he now looked through her. He just grew quieter, older, a monument to a mistake. The oppressive summer heat finally broke for good, and a crisp, scouring autumn wind swept through Savannah, carrying away the last scent of magnolias and the clinging residue of secrets. Charlotte stood in her real, untamed garden, the mistress of Grey Gardens once more, truly and completely alone. She had not won back a husband's love, for it had never truly been hers to lose. She had reclaimed her territory, her legacy, and a profound, unshakable peace, and in a small, honest watercolor of a flawed, beautiful, real place, she possessed the only artifact of the entire, wretched affair that held any value at all. And just like that, another journey on the Book Whisper comes to an end. We hope it was worth your while. If this story found a place in your thoughts, help us keep the magic alive. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next world we explore. Your like is the best signal telling us which tales to tell more of. Thank you for listening. Until the next adventure.